So, Axe the Tax has been the slogan from the Conservative Party. And of course, Justin Trudeau saying that the Conservatives have no plan for the environment. And this is where we're going to have to get into some of the contention today. Rob Haines, thanks for coming back and joining me. Rob Haines is a Conservative candidate to be running in the North Burnaby. Sorry. Looking forward to your run, but I wanted to have you back on to talk about the environmental issue. Now, the charge is that the Conservatives don't care about the environment. They don't care. They don't believe in environmental issues. What is actually the stance with the Conservative government?
Well, first off, I think people in Canada forget that it was Brian Mulroney that first came in with the first greenhouse gas targets, and it was under his leadership that we started looking at CFCs and ozone hole stuff. And so we brought those policies in. So those first earliest environmental policies, where these are concerned, it really goes back to the Conservatives. And then if we want to fast forward to the Harper years, it's the Harper government that first signed on for COP15 to lower emissions by whatever that target number happened to be at that particular time. So um, the goal that the Liberals are talking about meeting, that they've never met the Harper goal, yet they keep changing the goalposts and more and more and more and more. And in the 2021 election, I asked that question to Terry Beach, who's the Liberal MP here. I said, well, what are you doing? You've not met the first goal, and you just keep changing the goalposts. I can go and yell out, I'm going to lower emissions by 100% by whatever year you pick and choose it. But what are you going to do? And his answer was, well, we're trying not to raise the temperature of the planet by 1.5 degrees. I'm like, that's not really an answer. It's not doing anything. You're changing the goalposts. You're giving a new target with nothing satisfactory to actually make that change. And so what we see right now when we're talking about axe the tax, well, why not axe the tax? It's not a climate policy, it's a taxation policy. The money doesn't go to fighting any kind of climate change narrative or anything. The money's not used to be invested into green technologies or innovative technologies. It's just tax. And for the BC carbon tax, it goes into general revenue. And that's not what it was supposed to do. In fact, the promise was that it wouldn't. And well, now what happens? Well, they're going to collect $9 billion over 3 years and only give back $3.5 billion to British Columbians in that particular program. So $1 in 3 are going back to British Columbians. Well, why not axe that tax? Because no one's getting any benefit out of it.
So in
And
British
in the federal one, same
Well,
thing.
in British Columbia here, we have an innovator. We have Edison Motors. They've been doing a bang up
Yeah.
job at in innovating the trucking industry and making these amazing repurposed uh, diesel electric trucks that can do off highway, they can do on highway, all kinds of stuff. And this is great. And they went for some of that carbon tax money. Hey, there's grants. Okay, let's go fill it out. It turned out there was a big scam going on, and I'm gonna have Chase Barber on the show to explain that. But so that's in British Columbia. Is this happening all over Canada? Because we're seeing the government mismanage pretty much everything from the Arrive Can app to what's happening in the province of British Columbia with this trucking company, and what's actually happening with the money that they're collecting from this carbon tax. Is it actually saving the environment?
It's not saving the environment because the money's not going to the environment. And even when they may go out and say, look, 80% of Canadians are better off. No, they aren't. And the parliamentary budget officer, he was able to prove that. And between him and Tiff Macklem, the governor of the Bank of Canada, collectively, they've both said that it increases the cost of inflation. So it increases everything because, you know, nothing gets anywhere without energy. Things don't just magically appear on a shelf. And no matter if you're going to charge um, a user that manufactures something the additional tax, they have no choice but to put it onto the cost of that good. And by the time it gets to the shelf, who's paying for that? We're paying for that. And I think just go back, just in general, Arrive Can, the dental plan, child care. What has the government, this Trudeau government, what have they actually said they're going to do and actually completed it? Housing, well, that program is half a decade old, and they put in billions of dollars and made 11,000 out of 75,000 homes. That's a pretty expensive house. Arrive can $64 million to GC Strategies, and who are they? I mean, the first guy in 100 and some odd years to get censured by the House of Commons. Like, nothing's been spent. All of the provinces that signed up for the $10 a day childcare, they're all saying it's not enough money. The providers who wanted to do that for people, the individual provider that wants to give that to people, can't stay open because it's not enough money to fund them with all of the inflationary costs that have gone on, the wage inflation, the cost of the rents, everything else, and that's all because of this tax and every other tax. Axe the tax, you're going to get rid of a significant portion of inflation. If you take a look at Saskatchewan, they stopped collecting the carbon tax, and their inflation rate last month, I think, was about 1.8%, where the rest of Canada was about 2.8, 2.9. And the Canada average includes the fact that Saskatchewan is very low. So take Saskatchewan out of the mix, and what does that mean for the rest of Canada? What does that mean for British Columbia? Axe the tax, man. It'll help with inflation. It's not going to solve the climate problems that people think we have. All it does is take money out of the pockets of Canadians. They need that money so they can put food on the table for their families.
So I've always argued, and I've brought this up many times on the channel here, that we all care about the environment. As Canadians, we all really care about the
Yes.
environment. But the problem is that there's this innate thing with humanity that when you're poor, you don't have time to care about the environment around you. You really have only time
No.
to care about your immediate needs. Uh, Building shelter, clothing yourself, feeding your family. These are all heating your home, cooling it if you're in some parts of southwestern Ontario and they're really hot in the summer. It's
Yes.
these are the things that are most important if you don't have a lot of resources coming in. But it's once things are abundant, then people start to look around and they go, "Hey, this place is a dump. Let's clean this up. Why don't we all gather
Yeah.
together and fix this and move forward?" And this is what's really fueled me in what I call I made t-shirts about this because I thought it's hilarious. It's the
Yes.
ecological, not environmental movement in Canada. An emphasis on the logical, not mental. Because what we're seeing out of the liberals and even the Green Party, the New Democrats, is this call to action to do something in a very broad. There's no certain terms about what it is they want to do. The sky's falling. It's this hysteria that we're all going to burn in a few years, and and let's
Yes.
sacrifice everything for that instead of taking a second and going, wait a second, what are the actual issues? Is it a particular chemical that's going into water, particular chemical that's going up into the air? How can we clean this? Is there technologies that we can use to clean this? Can we have industry and can we essentially have our cake and eat it too with new technology? Or is it a case of no, we all just need to deindustrialize and become poor people again?
Great question, great statement. The answer, I would say, is yes, we can do all those things. The farming industry, they cut their emissions by being more and more and more efficient with their use of fertilizers. But what I would really like to hit on here, because I've talked to you briefly once before about this ecological environmental thing. Here in Burnaby, North Seymour, we worked on policies that we sent to the Quebec Policy Convention this year that were all environmental based. We worked on 10 policies. We had 60 EDAs from across the country sign on to these policies. And with their help, we ended up getting 3 environmental policies passed at convention. So they are now official party policy. And they were made right here in Burnaby, North Seymour. And they revolve around two kind of basic concepts. One, the main one for our environmental principles is this idea of protection. right? So protect clean air, the climate, protect biodiversity, waterways, and they were written and edited in a way that is functional across the country. So some of the older policies that still exist, there's some policies in the old manual are very regional. So Great Lakes waterways, for example. Well, that's very important, more important to the people that live there. So we wanted to go, no, we need a policy that is truly national. So we wanted to make if we have our environmental principles, we want to say we want to protect waterways, we want to protect the climate. It doesn't matter where you are in Canada, that's valid, whether you're in the Fraser or the St. Lawrence River or any other river in between. The policy should reflect that. The second component of that is protection is number one. The second, though, is innovation, not taxation. And this is a way for us to encourage by mandating within our policies specific direction instead of vagaries that you get in these liberal policies, specific direction that says we want to use science-backed data, responsible development of our resources, regulatory control over those resources, and encourage companies to innovate. So instead of taxing the end user, the retail person like you and I that has to go and buy a jug of milk,
Mm-hmm.
um, put it on the other side, right? It's not that we're saying we're going to give oil companies free reign to do whatever they want. No, not at all. We want you, and it's in our policy that we wrote, we want you to use the best technology available that's science backed to do that work responsibly. We want to get our products to the rest of the world. We want to make jobs for Canadians. And so those policies, when we're talking about energy transition and energy security, so I should back up a little bit for your viewers here. The three policies that we got passed were environmental principles, that's number one. Energy transition is number two, and energy security. And so when we're looking at energy transition, we are talking about the move from fossil fuels and carbon-based energy sources to new sources of energy. Maybe that's hydrogen. That includes small modular nuclear reactors, all those things. But what it's really saying is we're not there yet. We need to innovate to make those things happen. And so the Liberal government and Stephen Guilbeault, they're like, no, you can't do that. Bad person for driving your car to work and taking your kids to soccer and hauling your hockey equipment around. Bad person for having an SUV to haul all that stuff around. No, we're not saying that. We're saying the companies need to be responsible, Canadians need to be responsible, and government needs to be responsible. And we're going to be responsible by enforcing those regulations. And then when we're talking about energy security, let's get our products to the rest of the globe. Let's make sure that we have affordable energy for our own citizens to use because we live in climates like you said, it's going to be super hot in the summer in southern Ontario and people need air conditioning. It's also damn cold up north and they need to heat their homes and sometimes a heat pump ain't going to cut it.
No, it's
And
not.
so we need other forms of energy. We need to be respectful that Canadians live in one of the largest nations geographically in the world and it contains temperate rainforests and Arctic tundra, right? Our people live all over the place. And we need to be able to give them cheap, affordable energy that is reliable and consistent. And Canada has that resource. The fact that we're paying so much for energy for a country that is so wealthy for energy, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And these are policies that people can find about. They are official party policy. They were passed at the convention in September. Now, how that appears on an election platform, that's not for me to say. I'm not the guy that writes an election platform. But when I go door to door and people say conservatives don't believe in the environment, actually, you know what, ma'am? I was a part of the committee that wrote the policies that went to the policy convention. We had three policies passed. That represents 10% of all policies that were passed at convention. And that means every conservative riding or every riding, 338 at the time, people were there voting on those policies. That's conservatives around the country, coast to coast, voted to make those policies happened, because they wouldn't have happened if just Burnaby North Seymour wanted it, or if West Vancouver Sunshine Sea to Sky wanted that. None of that would have happened if only one riding wanted it. That needed to have the support of conservatives all across the country. And we had support on the East Coast, the West Coast, in Quebec, in Ontario, in Alberta, in Manitoba, in Saskatchewan, everywhere. We had support from that. Over 60 EDAs.
You're already touching on some of the questions that I want to ask you. No, you're way ahead of me. It's great. No, it's great. Getting on some of the resources, clean energy. I've heard Pierre talk about non-dictator oil. We could also,
Yes.
I like the idea of saying buy logs from us, not from the Amazon rainforests.
Yeah.
Stop buying poached logs, buy Canadian lumber. It's a renewable resource, this kind of thing. But big question is, there's a lot of people on the left, normal liberal voters, NDP voters, that just they buy into it, or they've bought into it for a long time, that the conservatives just don't care about the environment. This is the opinion that the conservatives have. How do you sell this to non-conservatives? How do you sell this to people who are on the fence? Maybe they like the conservatives' fiscal platform after 9 years of Trudeau spending all
Yeah.
our money like a drunken sailor, and they're like, I would come along to the conservatives, but they're just so bad with the environment. What would you say to those people?
I would say to those people that they need to remember a part of what our history was, which is why I mentioned the Mulrooney years. They would need to look a bit deeper. I also think, though, that the time has come for the conservatives to really step up and actually say what it is we truly believe about the environment. I do think that maybe in the past some of our environmental policies weren't as clear as they could have been, and that's why the team that I worked with, I mean, full transparency, I wasn't the driver of that committee. We had an environmental engineer, Peter Cron. He's an amazing, smart dude, and he was our scientist on that committee that was really able to help us with that. So these policies were written with science in mind, and I think that's the message we need to get out to conservatives and the liberals that would like to come to our side, particularly in this coming election. We need a better communication campaign about that. Again, we're not in a party, like, we're not in an election platform right now, and I hope that when the time comes, these policies and what we really believe to be important to Canadians for the climate and for environmental responsibility, I think that message needs to get out. I believe that it will. I believe that it will. It just maybe hasn't gotten out. It hasn't gotten out yet. But that's why I want to say to people in Burnaby North Seymour, if you want to support environmental policies and you want to support what we have going on, they were they were made here in Burnaby North Seymour. They are a made in BNS solution with all of British Columbians in mind. And when we made them, we talked at length about no, we need a policy that is applicable. It doesn't matter where you are in the country, that whatever your local issue is, it can be plunked into what that policy means. And that's responsibility, and it's respecting the environment. Like, affordability begins with responsibility. Like, economically, we can say that affordability begins with responsibility. Now, climate protection, environmental protection also has to start with responsibility, but it shouldn't come at the cost of kneecapping our economy. That's what we've seen with the Liberal government. They kneecapped all our major economies, all our major industries. We could replace all of the coal that India uses to power their people, all of their energy needs. We could replace that with what our natural resources are, and it would more than pay for 40 years worth of emissions that Canada would make. We make 1.8% of the emissions of the globe. Like, we went to the dark ages, we wouldn't make a difference in the greenhouse gas emissions and the carbon emissions that are going on on this planet. It wouldn't make a difference. And again, when you look at the Environment Canada's policies, they're not saying the emissions has to go to zero. The number they have is like 650-ish down to 525-ish. So they're only looking at cutting it by a essentially a third. So we're going to do all this pain for all these, for all of Canada is suffering under inflation to reduce our emissions by like not even a third, and people are poor because of it. That doesn't make any sense to me. We can move forward by investing in future technologies to make life more affordable, better jobs, better for the environment, no more dictator oil. We don't have to sell our coal overseas to China or India. Like our coal exports have gone up.
Yeah.
The Liberal government has sent ours. So we are, Stephen Guilbeault is punishing us for driving our car, yet shipping coal to China or India. Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, you are hurting us and contributing to the thing you say you're fighting. That's talking out of both sides, buddy. That's talking out of both sides. And it's we need to hold them accountable for it. It's a hypocrisy. Canadians are paying for their hypocrisy and for their ideological they're so rigid in their ideology that it's not helpful. It's not helping the planet. It's not helping Canadians.
No, and Canadians
These policies
are
will.
definitely suffering for it, and looking forward to a break from this. A lot of Canadians are looking, well, not only for the ecological thing, a bit of common sense, the idea of
Yes.
being able to, like I said, have your cake and eat it too. We can be environmental, but not while going into the poorhouse, and possibly hold some of these other countries accountable for their consumption and what they've been doing. If this is such a big issue for so many people, I think I personally I'm more about the let's clean up the toxins, let's clean up the land, let's clean up that kind of thing. That's my main initiative
Yeah.
in all of this, and keep Canadians wealthy. I think that would be a good move more moving forward.
Well, we had boom times in Canada, right? We had boom times. And throughout those boom times, we were still improving the technology. So we've already done it. So all you've done is you've hurt people and you've broken what was working and not replaced it with something that does work. And it's, you know, we have an opportunity to make the world a better place and make ourselves profitable and make ourselves happy again over these things. And as you brought it up, common sense. It's another area where common sense can win the day here. Let's be environmentally responsible. Let's protect the environment where we can. Let's make sure that Canadians can have jobs, and let's make sure that we can make a business case. Sorry, Mr. Trudeau, there is a business case for LNG and all of our other oil products. There is a business case for that, and we can make that happen. And we can do more to positively affect the climate around the world by enacting the policies that I've mentioned here today, and by being targeted and being specific in that and making that request of industry, we can make a bigger impact in a short number of years um, by doing that than the Liberal government has done in the past 9 years. I mean, even fracking in the US, they've seen a reduction in emissions in some categories. And we could do the same thing here very quickly if we just let people get to work.
Let people get to
No
work.
one
I
wants to ruin the
I
environment.
love I love that message. I love that message. I'll show the website here again. Rob Haines, candidate for North Burnaby Seymour, and you're going to be you're running for the position. You're a nominee for the Conservative candidacy. And well,
Yep.
wishing you luck on this one. Love the message that you're pushing forward. As always, the links will be in the description down below. Thank you again so much, Rob.
And thank you for your time, Clyde. I'm glad to get these messages out.